Hi, I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation and welcome back to the Hive. In this new style of video that I'm calling Code Review, we're going to take a look at a workflow automation that I use in creating these HiveMind Automation videos. And it saves me some time when I'm creating scripts and outlines for videos. And because HiveMind Automation is more than being just about home automation, I think some of you will at least be slightly interested in what I'm doing with this workflow automation, and hopefully it's useful to some of you out there, especially if you're interested in automating the generation of Word and text documents with variable substitution using Python. So while I roll the intro, let's take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you get notified when I release new videos each week. So as an independent YouTuber who also works full-time, keeping up with creating content isn't easy, especially while also trying to balance a home life. To simplify my video production workflow, I've begun slowly introducing some workflow automations into the process to help me reduce the time that I spend doing repetitive tasks during the video production workflow. Now, I use a lot of workflow automation in my day job to run reports, among other things, because I'd much rather spend my time engineering solutions to problems than gathering data to write reports. And for that, I use the Python scripting language. Now, I am by no stretch of the imagination a snake charmer when it comes to Python, but it is a skill that I've been trying to develop more, and the more that I use Python, the better I get at it. Now, obviously, if you want to play along at home, you're going to need Python on your machine. Now, unfortunately, that is not the topic of this video, but I'm sure you can find tutorials online for your particular platform to get Python installed. We'll be doing a lot more Python in the future, so it might be worthwhile considering getting it set up anyway. Now, I'll also put a link to my code on GitHub, so if you want to, you can download it and modify it to suit your needs if you so wish. If you're a fellow YouTuber, this workflow automation might save you a fair bit of time as well. Bear in mind, however, that my code is built to run using Python 3 on a Mac, and it hasn't been tested using Python 2.7, and it would definitely need some tweaking to work on either Windows or Linux. Now, the workflow that we're taking a look at today comes into play right near the beginning of my production pipeline. You see, whenever I think of a video idea, I put it into my JIRA instance. And JIRA is a project management and ticketing system that's commonly used in software development and IT departments. Now, I chose JIRA because I've used it before for work. It's customizable and it's got a pretty decent web API for me to query so that I can get data out of the JIRA tickets that we create. So when I'm finally ready to get started working on an idea, there's a bit of work to get set up. Firstly, I need to create some folders on my network share where I store all the data related to the project, including video files, scripts, etc. I also need to generate a script outline, and there are a couple of other things that we do for every single video, and sometimes it's worth getting these things done at the beginning as well. Now, before I started automating the process of generating these folders and so forth, I had a couple of problems. Firstly, the folder structures were inconsistent from project to project, and while that wasn't always a problem, it was more of an annoyance. It was really frustrating to be looking for something specific and not being able to find it because of a lack of consistent folder structures between different projects. Secondly, a lot of what I was doing manually, whether I was typing into a Word document or creating folders, was more or less the same every single time, with only minimal variation. Now, if you've been watching for a while, you'll notice I say pretty much the same thing at the start and end of every video. And it's not just me, other YouTubers do this too. So realizing that I was doing the same work over and over again to type that out into a Word document, and I was getting poor consistency between runs, I decided that this was part of the process that I really needed to automate. And thirdly, there's other resources where a large chunk of the content is the same regardless of the video, like the video description down below. There's obviously parts of that data that change, like the timestamps, the topic-specific links, etc. But the bulk of it's the same every single time, like the links to the Home Assistant page, my social media pages, and even the general layout. So I decided that automating that part of the creation process would be helpful as well. With the preface out of the way, let's head over to the Python script and take a look at how I've done this. So we are over on our laptop in Visual Studio Code, which is my preferred development environment for pretty much any programming that I do these days. And we have our generate.py file open here. Generate.py is the main method that we use for creating these scripts, and we start off with some imports right at the top. So we do need to install some libraries in order to be able to use this script. So we've got this from docx import document, so we would need to install that. Now in my readme file here, I actually have let me maybe make that a nice preview of the readme file instead. So inside the readme file, I've got the instructions for how to install the various libraries that we may need here. I'll pop back to generate.py. So we're importing the docx library, specifically the document portion of the docx library, and some formatting functions here to be able to align paragraphs. We're also importing the JSON library because we're interfacing with our JIRA instance here. We're importing OS because we're going to create some folders, and we're importing the requests library as well. Now, something else I'm doing here that's a little bit interesting is I'm importing this thing that I'm calling auth. And you'll see over here on the left, I've got this auth.py file. Now, I'm not going to open that auth.py file simply because it contains some pretty sensitive data. But what we can do is pop over to the auth_template file. Now, really the only sensitive data that's in my auth.py file is the headers for connecting to my JIRA instance. It contains some hashes that help authenticate to JIRA. But the rest of these variables that we're defining in here, you can modify and use to your own advantage. So I've got this auth_template.py. So if you update the contents of this, if you're downloading it for yourself, you can update the contents and then save it as auth.py, and then that will get imported here, and we'll take a look at what happens with those a little later on. The first thing we're doing inside our script here after the imports is we are defining the JIRA variable as true. Now, I've done this so that the code can be abstracted. Now, if you don't have a JIRA instance, you could by all means set this to false, and then it will change the behavior of this script. In my case, I will set this to true, and we'll actually take a look at the various ways that that operates as we go through a little later on. So I'm also defining a root path of /volumes/hivemind/videos. So if I go to my root path here on my computer, we're in /volumes, and then we've got /hivemind and then /videos. So we can actually go into this folder and we see this is where we're going to have our root of the project. Now we've got some additional variables in here. So just the comments here mentioned we import the auth.py file to keep this a bit more secure. So inside the auth.py file, we've got Facebook URL, Twitter URL, Instagram URL. And if we pop over here, we'll see Facebook URL, Twitter URL, Instagram URL. So those three are defined there. And if I go back to generate.py, by putting auth dot in front, we're actually going and looking at this file that we're importing here and looking at then that variable that's defined there. We've also got auth.name, and that is defined here, and that's just my name, Stu. And we've got channel name and a channel address. And if we take a look here, we've got auth.channel name, auth.channel address, and then project. Now this is the project prefix that I have inside my JIRA instance. So if I pop back over to auth template, I've got the project prefix of HMAV. I've also got a URL defined here of my JIRA instance, and then the HTML headers for connecting to JIRA. So back over here, we've got our auth.project, and that's that project prefix. And then this is where that variable that we defined earlier, JIRA equals true, first comes into place. So if JIRA is true, we're going to then define our JIRA URL using auth.url and auth.headers. That's only happening if this JIRA is true. So if you set that to false, this part of the code will actually go into this else thing and just pass. Then we are defining a variable of a type prompt. Now this just defines the prompt that we see when we're selecting the type of project. And I've defined this string inside triple quotation marks to keep the string open across multiple lines. So I can just hit return here and go 5 and then put in something else here if I wanted to. And that makes it a lot easier for us to then modify the longer strings as we go through some of our templates a little later on, so that we can actually just see it on one page, and we can see our formatting a little bit nicer rather than having to put in \n for new lines and those kinds of things. We're then defining our video type. So we're first instantiating an integer variable of 0, and then I'm creating a while loop here. So while the project type is not either 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're going to prompt the user to select a project type from the list that is defined here in our type prompt. So we're taking the input, and the type prompt is the prompt for the input, and we're actually also trying to cast that as an integer as we take that input from the user. The next thing we do here is we ask the user to enter a JIRA project ID. Now, to be fair, I could probably modify that a little bit so that it's a little bit easier to work with if you're in the non-JIRA setup. Actually, I might just do that now. So enter the project ID, and we're going to save that. So project ID equals, and we're inputting what is the project ID after, and then we're doing variable substitution here using an F string, and we're looking at the variable project, which is pulled from the auth template here, which is HMAV. So this particular line, when we run it, is going to ask us what is the project ID after HMAV. And then if the JIRA variable above is true, we're going to then try and pull the video title from JIRA using the JIRA API. And that's where we use the requests library to get the URL. So we're looking at the base URL of JIRA, and then we're looking at REST API latest issue, and then we are looking at the project, so that string of HMAV, and then the project ID, which was the number that we input up here when we prompted the user. We're then taking that result and passing it through JSON loads to turn it into a JSON result, and then we are taking that JSON result and we only want to output the summary field from that result. And we're turning that into the job title of job that we're working on. Now, in the case where we have JIRA is not true, so in the case of it being false, we're just prompting the user for what is the title of this project, and we're explicitly casting that as a string as well. So then down here we are setting the path based on the input that we had up here for asking for a project type. And then what we're doing, if it's project type 1, we're using the root path that we defined up the top here. There we are. So volumes, HiveMind videos. So again, we're using f-string variable substitution. So we're using the root path, and if it's type 1, we're going to getting started series, and then we're also defining extra bits of the path that we're going to add the project. So that would be, in this case, HMAV, and then the project ID that we entered up here, and then we would also put in the job title as well, which we either pull from JIRA or define by an input from the user. And so if it's type 2, we're going into product reviews. If it's type 3, we're going to quick tips. And if it's type 4, we're going into code reviews. Now, I'll probably be expanding this for my own uses later on, but you get the idea. And if you were using this for yourself, you would modify the way your pathing is set up anyway. And if it's not a 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're going to prompt the user to input the integer again. This will pretty much never run because we are handling all of that here in the while loop. The next thing we're doing is, so we've defined our path here, and then we're also defining a render path. And so what I do with my videos is I create a folder inside my project folder called render, and that is where the final render of the video output goes when I finish editing in DaVinci Resolve. It's also where I put a text file that contains the video description. I also put my thumbnail in there when I've finished working on that in Photoshop, and there's a couple of other bits and pieces that go in there as we complete them that are relevant to when I'm uploading the video to YouTube. So the next thing we're doing is we're creating some folders on the file system. So we are using the OS library, and if we scroll all the way back up, you'll see that we imported OS a little bit earlier. So that was one of the first things we did. We're using the function makedir or make directory, and then we're making the path that we defined using the inputs here. We're also then making the render path after making this path. So we're creating a bunch of different things here, and as my comment says here, you could quite reasonably create any directory structure you want. So then we get into our text templates. So these are just, again, we're looking at f-strings with variable substitution, and we're taking the intro template, which as you may or may not recall, pretty much at the start of every video I say, "Hi, I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation and welcome to the Hive." So we're using variable substitution here. So if I were to go over here to my auth template, if I was to change this name here to Bill and change this channel name to Bill's Plant Barn, and we'll need to make sure that those are double quoted because we've got an apostrophe in the middle here. So let's save that. So now that we've changed that, if we were to have that as our auth.py, this would be, "Hi, I'm Bill from Bill's Plant Barn and welcome to the Hive." Now with, say, "welcome to the Hive," you could again modify this to say, let's put in another string substitution here, and we'll call that greeting. And I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to define greeting as welcome to the Hive, but you could reasonably change this to whatever you want. So as you can see, as we're doing this code review, we're finding better ways to do this code anyway. So this is now going to say, "Hi, I'm Bill from Bill's Plant Barn and welcome to the Hive," because we are using the greeting that we defined further up in this particular script. And then in this video, so we've actually got two carriage returns in here. In this video, we'll be taking a look at and then job title. Now I tend to change this when I actually start working on the script outline itself, but it's a good placeholder. So normally I put in a few extra lines after I have said, what we'll be taking a look at. And then I say something along the lines of, while I roll the intro, take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified while I release new videos each week. And let's get started. So that is our templated intro. Now, obviously, we can modify this in the Word document later on, but it's kind of nice to have that template there, and it's consistent every single time I run this script. Then we've got the templated outro, which talks about, that's all the time we have. Be sure to comment down below, and don't forget to follow the channel name on, again, a string substitution here on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Those are all actually relatively new, so don't forget to follow HiveMind Automation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All of those things that we YouTubers have to say for engagement, because engagement on videos is awesome and it helps the YouTube algorithm to recommend more of HiveMind Automation videos. Asking you to subscribe, supporting the channel by using the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. And then thanks so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Those are things that I say every single video. And then we've got a text base for our description file. Now, the video description down the bottom, as I said, down below, is pretty much always going to follow a very standard format. We've got our job title. Again, I tend to change this because our job title's not always exactly what I want to have in the video description. But again, it's a good placeholder. I always have my links here, and one of those links that I've started including recently is my channel name on YouTube and then the address for the channel. And again, those are things that are coming in from the auth template. So the channel name and the channel address. As we scroll down, we've also got the support the channel. So we've got a Buy Me a Coffee link here in the video description down below. Find HiveMind Automation on social media. So I could also, let's also do a string substitution here. In fact, we need to do a string substitution here because we want channel name. So find channel name on social media. And we've got our Twitter URL, our Instagram URL, and our Facebook URL, which are all defined here in our auth template. And then we've got some affiliate links. I need to put 2 carriage returns in there because I had 2 \n's, which do the same thing, mind you, but because we're using the triple quoted string here, putting a carriage return in actually puts a carriage return into the string. So if we have any affiliate links, I will put them in there. So generally speaking, those would be links to things that you can buy, like LED strips, etc. And I tend to earn a commission when you buy from those links. We have our timestamp section here, and if you've done timestamps on YouTube, you'll know that 000 is always the first timestamp that you need in your YouTube timestamps, so I just predefine that anyway. And in another video, I'll talk about how I go about automatically creating my timestamps in a format that's nice for this file. We've got our helpful links section with Home Assistant, Raspberry Pi, Balena Etcher, Home Assistant for iOS, and Home Assistant for Android, and some credits for my music provider, which is purpleplanet.com. So that is the outline of the description text. We're just using a multi-line string with a bunch of variable substitutions in there. So now that we've defined our templates, we go down to a section where we're creating the Word document. So we're going to instantiate the Word document by calling document equals document, and then there's just a an open and close parentheses here. This is calling, if we go back up, this, so we're importing from docx, we're importing the document function. And so what that's doing is it's just instantiating the document function. It's creating a document object. So now that this is our document object, we are putting a heading in, and our heading is simply document.add_heading, and we're using again an F string with variable substitution. So our heading is going to be our project short string, which is HMAV, our project ID, which is the number that we defined earlier, and then our job title, which we either defined earlier or pulled from JIRA, and then we've got an integer of 0, which is just the type of heading that we want. We're then using heading.alignment equals a WD align paragraph dot center. So we're taking this heading definition, and then we are doing heading.alignment, which is a sub-function of the object here, and then aligning it center. And we do this after every paragraph that we create as well. So then we're inserting our text blocks. So we're adding the word intro inside some brackets, and we'll take a look at that later. We're then inserting our template. We're aligning it to center. We're inserting the text roll intro animation, aligning it to center. We're inserting this text here that says preface, aligning it to center, and then we're adding some dots with some carriage returns in between just to create some space, and then aligning it center. Then we're inserting a summary text block. So we're inserting the word summary and then putting some space and aligning all of that stuff to center. And then our outro text block. So again, outro, these words here that we're entering, I just use those as kind of placeholders when we're doing different sections of the script, and it helps me to find where I am on the teleprompter when we're doing them. So we're putting in our outro placeholder, and then we're adding the paragraph outro template. We are adding an empty paragraph, and then we're adding the word cut, the placeholder word cut there. Now, sometimes I also add things like thumbnails and that kind of stuff down the bottom there as well. And so once we have added all of this wall of text to our document, we're then doing a document.save, and we are saving it in the path that we defined earlier when we used our numbers to define our path. So we're saving it in that path, and we're saving it with a name of project. So in this case, HMAV, project ID, which would be the one that we defined earlier on, and then job title.docx. So we've done that, and that's now saved in that location. We're then going to generate our YouTube description file. So we are creating an object description file by opening inside our render path the file with project-project ID-job title-YouTube description.txt, and we're opening it with write privileges. We're then going description file.write and then the description text space, and then we are closing the file. So we've opened it, written to it, and closed it, and that is it. That is the script. That's how it works. Now, it's only about 230 lines, but as you can see, it's a little bit of explaining to get through that. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at what the code does, let's run it and see what happens. So in the terminal down the bottom here, I'm going to run Python 3, and I'm going to then run /and generate.py, and I'm going to run that. And so it's asking me straight off the bat, what type of project is this? And I'll call this project review. So I'll select number 4. And it's asking me, what is the project ID after HMAV? Now, if I'm not sure, I can go over to JIRA and I can go, okay, I'm looking at 58. So smart locks, yay or nay. So if I type in 58 and then hit return, we get the output of smart locks, yay or nay. And now if we head back over to Finder here, if we look in our videos folder, we've got code review, and we should have in here, yes we do. So now if I expand this out, we've got HMAV 58, smart locks, yay or nay. And we've got our docx file in there. And if we open that up, this is the output that we get. So it's obviously still pretty bare, but it has all of the stuff that I tend to say at the beginning and the end of the video, and it's got some of my placeholders in here as well that help me to figure out where I'm going to say certain things. And then if we expand out this render folder, which was the other folder that we created, we've got our YouTube description.txt, and if we open that up, we see that we've got smart locks yay or nay, HiveMind automation on YouTube, etc. And we can see all of those things that we created before. Now, when I upload my video, I normally just copy and paste this into the description field. I am working on some more automations to help me make that even simpler as well when I upload videos. So now that we've seen that run, let me delete that file because I'm not ready to actually start working on that project just yet. So now that we've run that with the JIRA section here defined as true, let's take a look at what happens if we change this to false. So this, you'll remember that I said that that will change the behavior of this script. And I'll just go back down to my terminal here and I'll clear. So I've changed this JIRA value now to false. So we're going to see what happens if we have defined this as false. And I've saved the file after making that change. We're going to run the file again. We're going to choose code review. We're going to enter a ridiculous number in here, like 467, because that's well outside the realms of what is inside my JIRA, and I'm going to hit return. And then now it's asking me what the title of this project is, because when we got down to here, if JIRA equals true, it looks up the JIRA details, but if JIRA is not true, the job title is defined as whatever we put in here. So I'm just going to put in test, I'm going to run that, and it's done. So if we pop back over here to our videos folder, we have HMAV 467 test, and if I open that up, we've got the document HMAV 467 test.docx, and we've got the same details in here. Inside our render folder, we have our YouTube description, test, and those details are all in there. So I'll clean that up and we'll go back to the top, and for my purposes I leave this as true. Obviously I'm just going to save that and I'm going to push this back up to GitHub because I need to make sure that my code is up to date. Update while filming. So we'll make that commit and we will push that up to GitHub. So that's how I create script outlines using automation. Now there's tons more that I'd like to do with this automation. Firstly, I'd really love to be able to trigger this from within the JIRA instance so that when I click the button that starts work on a project inside JIRA, it automatically generates the folder structure and templated files so that I don't need to manually trigger the script and input any values, as they'd already be passed from JIRA. I might also start looking at adding some additional fields to my JIRA tickets and pulling that data out as well. And that might be good for things like links to products to add to the description file, or even some information that I might need to add into my video outline. So that is my workflow automation for initiating work on a video project. If you want to download the code and take a look at it for yourself, I've put the link to the project on my GitHub page in the video description down below. In the current state, I think it'd be helpful for fellow YouTubers to simplify your script outline creations. You could reasonably modify this code to achieve more or less the same function as the mail merge function within Word itself, though it's unlikely to be as pretty. Or you could modify it to use it in conjunction with other web APIs to pull data from web services and generate reports like I frequently do for my day job. I do hope that you got something out of this video and enjoyed the sneak peek behind the curtain of how HiveMind automation videos get made. There will be more videos coming in the future on similar topics. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you out in some way. Be sure to comment down below with an automation idea you'd like to see me cover in a future video, whether that's workflow or home automation. Don't forget to follow HiveMind Automation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and those links are in the video description down below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button down below and give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing now. While you're at it, please hit the bell icon so that you get notified when I release new videos each week. Lastly, if you're enjoying what I'm doing here and you want to help to support the channel, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description down below. And those contributions through the Buy Me a Coffee link are put towards making more and better content for you to enjoy. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.